The English sad boy, J.S. Mill, outlined how the tyranny of the majority can be just as dangerous as traditional tyranny, and every amateur philosopher uses it as a justification for why socialism can't work. The Brexit vote, Trump's presidency, and 6ix9ine's career. The list of popular disasters is endless. But how much should leftists worry? The deeper you dig, tyranny of the majority is pretty relative. Since everyone always feels like they're being tyrannized by the majority. Slavery is a pretty clear example of majority tyranny that we can all agree to, right? Well, the famous slave owner John C. Calhoun thought it was slave owners who were being forced to follow the whims of the masses. And actually, slavery is better understood as an example of minority tyranny, where the wealthy imposed their will and made it the law of the land. That's how we got the Fugitive Slave Acts after all, and until their tyranny became so unruly, that's when the Civil War happened. Well, what about Jim Crow? This one is complicated because while the racist culture that drove Jim Crow had a life of its own, it was deeply embedded in the scientific racism used to justify colonization and slavery. Almost all cases of popular tyranny have material conditions that make the hate possible. American Japanese internment camps were rooted in economic anxiety and feelings of unfairness, precisely the same fears Germans had of the Jewish people. When you eliminate profit motives for discrimination, I won't pretend the hate disappears overnight, but it'll be a lot harder to stir up anti-minority sentiments in a society that doesn't incentivize you to do so. Going back to profits, there's little doubt that for American revolutionaries, the P and M in protections of minorities mainly stood for property and money. The common narrative surrounding majority rule was that the dumb peasantry would run the republic into the ground if not for anti-democratic measures. This is a common argument against us, the abandonment of rationality. Well, what if the masses are convinced that GMOs are bad despite what scientists say? There needs to be something in place to wrestle power away from the idiots. Irrational groupthink could end us. That's not likely. Take a workplace syndicate with no chosen leaders. There will be the more experienced and the less experienced, the more educated and the less educated. If a culture of deferment is established, like the one we have today, there's no reason to think that people will suddenly stop deferring to their elders or natural superiors. And since socialist countries, historically and theoretically, have a higher quality of life and rate of education, there will be less people believing straight-up fabrications. But there is one final example of majority tyranny outlined by John Stuart Mill. Social tyranny. What if a community, say, looks down on heterosexuality? They don't criminalize it, but you'll be isolated socially for sure, for simply living your life a certain way. It's possible that without a federated nation or centralized control, some pockets of society will choose to organize themselves in undesirable ways. The easy answer here is free association. If you don't like it, you can leave. This works in a leftist society because the economic constraints that usually exist in capitalist ones don't exist here. But it's a possible issue. What happens when you give people freedom and they use it to tyrannize others? In cases of a rogue community, is it right for surrounding communities to force independent people to be righteous? There is no easy answer. But in any transition towards a socialist, communist, or anarchist society, these ideas will have to be dealt with intentionally if you want to live in a truly harmonious, multicultural world. Thanks for watching.